Hey YouTubers, my name is Kenneth Johnson, the Johnson Customs LLC, and so the reason I'm disassembling the Smith & Wesson today is because we're going to do a custom Cerakote job. If any of you guys are interested in Cerakote, you guys can check out our website. I'll go ahead and put a link right over in this area somewhere, you'll see it. Okay, now for disassembling this firearm, you always want to perform a safety check. The way I like to do this is the firearm is on safety. I'm going to eject the mag to see that there is no ammunition inside of it. Set that aside, then I will go ahead and lift the firearm up, tuck it back, check inside the chamber. Look, everything's good. Let's cock the firearm back. You can see there's a notch in the slide, and that gives enough room for this pin to slide out through there. Go ahead and pull the pin the rest of the way out. Okie dokie, I apologize for any background noise in this video. I'm working in a shop during business hours. So go ahead, pull the firearm off safety so that way the slide can come forward. You've got the frame and the slide now taken apart from each other. So any small pieces that you're going to be not coating, I would say go ahead and start putting them in your organizer. Start working out small places for them. Okay. Then on the slide you've got your recoil spring. These things have quite a bit of tension behind them, so I would try to grab it from the rear and slowly let it forward. Sometimes these things can shoot out of your hands, so just try to keep a good hold on it. And pull the barrel out. I just try to reach through the ejection port, push the back of the barrel up a little bit, let it forward, pull it out. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and work on removing the sights. Our sight press is made by B&J Machine Incorporated. I really like this press. It's doing a lot of different firearms. Some presses only do several firearms. So far this one has done every handgun front sight that we've put in there, as far as coming from Glocks to 1911s to, I'm assuming it's even going to do this thing. Beretta rear sights. Beretta front sights don't really come out. So now what I'd like to do is make sure that your pusher head is not going to hit on the slide and only touch the front sight. So that way you don't mar up the finish on your handgun. This is kind of hard to hold this steady, but considering I'm not filming this with a potato, it really still shouldn't even look that bad. Okay, so the front sight's just about ready to come out. That's when I like to set it down, keep my finger on it so I don't drop it and lose it, because that would be very foolish. Okay. Okay, so now before you can put the slide back in the press to do your rear sight, you have to remove the safety, or at least my press, because my press just doesn't quite go wide enough to accommodate the safety. Okay, so to pull your safety off, go ahead and flip it onto safety. Insert your small punch inside, push down. There's a little thing on a spring. I like to cover small things like that with my fingers, that way if the thing were to shoot out of place, I don't lose the little piece that goes inside. Okay, so now when we're going to go ahead and continue pulling out our safety, I'm going to go ahead and say that it's probably a good idea to pull out this pin and spring. Just be very careful. You don't want to mar any of the finish on anything, mar any of the parts. If you have like little tweezers or something, if you don't have a whole bunch of tools, I mean that would probably also work for it pretty well. Okay, so now to continue removing the safety, we're going to go ahead and use our brass punch. Brass punches are softer and less likely to hurt anything. Push against your firing pin. It's going to stop at a certain point because it has a firing pin safety. So use another punch to go ahead and push down your firing pin safety right here. That enables the pin to travel further. You can go ahead and release your safety, and then the pin will stay there. Okay, so your firing pin's just going to go ahead and stay there. You don't have to keep pushing on it or nothing. Kind of frees up your hands a little bit. Go ahead and use your go ahead and use your thumb a little bit and push on your safety and go ahead and begin sliding it out of there. So now it's stopped a little bit. We're going to go ahead and use a little bit of a smaller punch. Just be careful you don't hit anything you don't want to hit, because that's definitely not very good. And then push on your firing pin just a little bit further. And keep pushing your safety out. Slide back. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and try to plug up the holes, that way if anything really comes out of there, out of place, I'll be able to catch it without losing it. But nope, looks like we're pretty well good right now. I'm going to go ahead and take this piece and put it aside. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and remove the firing pin and its spring. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of keep my fingers over all the holes. And then I'm going to go ahead and push the firing pin safety back down. Pops it back out towards us. But I would say that it's definitely not smart to put any sort of pliers on it and try to pull it out of there, because you definitely want to keep a firing pin nice and smooth. You don't want it to get any marred up. Okay, so to pull the firing pin spring out, you may want to go ahead and push down your firing pin safety, reach in there with a small pick tool, grab onto the end of your firing pin spring, and then pull it out. Pull it straight out the back. Okay, so next what I'd like to do is pull out the injector pin here. And mine's pretty stiff, so I would try to get a good sized punch, one that's not too big for the pin and one that's not way too small that it'll bend way too easily before knocking the pin. So the pin can come through the bottom without hitting against anything, which I've double checked to make sure of. I'm going to tap it out. I'm going to slide the ejector out carefully and look inside very carefully as I do it. Okay, so it's a little bit dirty, but I've got it out. The spring's still in place, nothing popped out of there, which is good. Okay, so now all that's left inside the bottom of your gun is these two pins here that are spring loaded, of course. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is go ahead and begin removing the rear sight. To begin removing the rear sight, I'm going to be using a 1/16 size Allen wrench. Okay, now to begin removing the rear sight, there is a small Allen head screw in here. I'm going to be using a 1/16 size Allen head wrench. When you get close to removing the screw, I'd be careful so that way you don't lose it. Go ahead and stick that aside. Okay, I'm going to put my wrench back. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull out my sight press. Slide my slide into the sight press. Okay, so now I've got the slide set inside my sight press. Now, like I had said before, you always want to go ahead and place the pusher head against the sight at a point where the pusher head is not going to put any tension on the actual slide itself. Now, just be careful when you're pulling the sight out, because those two pins that are in the bottom of the slide, the two pins that are left, are able to come out through the top underneath the sight. That's why we're moving the rear sight. Hold that so it doesn't get coated. So you just want to be careful while you're pulling this out that you don't have any of those springs or nothing coming out of place. I've placed my sight press in a way that it kind of holds down those two little springs. You can kind of see them in here a little bit. There's a little plate that's on top of them, so that way when you're sliding them out you don't wreck the springs, nothing catches, nothing wrecks the springs, which is good thinking on Smith & Wesson's part. Okay, now that I've removed the rear sight, you can see I've got my little plate here. This plate is so that way when you're sliding the rear sight out, that the that it can't catch on any of the springs and ruin your springs. So that way they just the rear sight just slides right over this. So you can also see that one of the springs is larger in diameter than the other. One's also slightly longer. Things like that when you're pulling apart guns is things that you really want to try to make sure to notice and probably even take notes on for putting it back together, just to make the putting back together process a lot faster. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and flip the slide over. I'm going to go ahead and put my finger over these pieces so that way they don't accidentally fall out. And then go ahead and just push against the bottom of each pin, get them started coming out. Now the springs are not attached to the pins, so they can come apart separate. So like I had said before, you want to make sure that since the springs are different, that you know which one does what, which one goes to which piece. Okay, so now both of them are out. Okay, so now for the most part we have our slide disassembled. Okay, so now we have our slide disassembled. We're going to go ahead and start working on the frame now. We're going to get this completely disassembled. So now I know it may seem a little stupid some of the times when I'm hammering on stuff. I'm either hammering on my nice foam yoga mat, but I've definitely seen videos of people hammering on stupider things. People have taken the grips of pliers and they've put their guns on there and tried hammering that stuff out. I definitely wouldn't recommend that. Our plastic block seems to work pretty good. Okay, so now that you've got this pin removed, you're going to want to go ahead and take a punch. I'm going to go ahead and suggest again a brass punch. Brass punches are much softer and aren't likely to wreck anything. Not like a steel punch. Okay, so you're going to want to insert it into the hole that's in the bottom of your grip. Push down on that. Now that inside there is your hammer spring. So basically this is now spring tensioned from the spring from your hammer. So as you pull that out of there, just be careful of that spring. You just want to be cautionary of it. Now you know that it's in there. Slide your grip off. Okay, so now you've got a little bit of a skeletonized look at your frame. You can kind of see what other small pieces are there. Just want to be careful when you're tossing and turning it around. Know that no small pieces can come off. So like this piece here, this can all come off. This would be a pretty big piece and pretty hard to lose, but still just know that that can't come off. So just try to make sure that while you're working on something like this, that you're not going to be losing any small pieces. And then it'll be really hard to put back together. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys to use a small brass punch. What you want to do is push down the little pin that's right there, and then use your thumbnail and go ahead and start unthreading your mag release off. Now if it gets a little stuck or nope, brass punch bent. They're pretty soft. They're pretty simple. I mean, if yours is a little bit stuck, you can use a little flathead screwdriver. That'll help. I didn't really need it. So. Okay, so now your mag release button comes off. Then your mag, the actual part that holds your mag in place, will come out the back. And then you have the small pin on spring that's in there. Now that's available to come out. So I would go ahead and pull that out. So that way when you're flipping the gun over, you don't lose anything. Go ahead and pull your spring out. You won't want that to fall out while you're trying to work on something else. Oh, crap, I hate reggae. Hello, Johnson Customs. Kenny speaking. Oh, hey, how you doing? Oh, you know those little blocks that have, they're like a little plastic. Okay, I'd like to give out a special thanks to my next door neighbor, Black Rifle Tactical. He was able to set me up with a Wheeler Engineering Universal Bench Block. I'm pretty excited to get to use this thing today, and I really appreciate him setting me up with one today. Alright, so now back to where we were. We're going to go ahead and pull the spring out from the magazine release. Now, I can tell just by looking down inside of it. I'll try to get the camera to focus in on it a little bit. that it is a little bit rusty, which I'm assuming that means that the spring may be a little bit hard to pull out of there. I'm going to go ahead and use some very small needle nose pliers, and I'm also still going to be very careful. I'm not going to compress the spring too hard with my pliers. I don't want to break anything or possibly even bend anything. I'm just going to try to get a better grip on it as I pull. Okay, got it. It's nice out of there. I'm going to put it in my compartment with the rest of the magazine release pieces. Okay, so now as I'm looking into the more complicated pieces of the frame, I can see that there's a little leaf spring held by a pin, which is pushing down on this piece here. And I'm going to go ahead and start off by removing that pin to remove the tension off of some of the other parts. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and set the handgun on the bench block. Going to go ahead and grab a small punch and going to go ahead and start hammering that pin out. Let's give it a few small taps, kind of get it started. I'm going to place one finger over the leaf spring, help keep the tension off of it as I back my punch back out. Then release my finger. Okay, so now next you're going to be freeing up quite a few of your other parts by taking out this next pin right here. I'm going to go ahead and use a brass punch. When you can get into getting to the point where you can use a fatter brass punch, that's when I'd say you can go ahead and start using a brass punch. But other than that, on any small pin, a brass punch with any amount of force really is just going to bend. Yeah, I mean, that really hardly even required enough force to have to use a hammer. Okay, so we've got the pin out there, which also frees up this lower pin here, not having the keeper on the other side. So we'll go ahead and pull that out, get it out of the way. Okay, so now that you've got that pin removed, go ahead and grab onto your hammer, slide it out through the top. Of course, way too big, you're not going to be able to slide it through the bottom very easily. Got that out of there. A lot of these other little pieces, they're going to come out too. Now these little pieces also have springs that help keep them in the right position. So you just want to be careful that you don't lose these springs while you're messing with the gun. I'm going to use a small pick tool. Grab onto the end of the springs, pull them each out. After I get them out, while I still remember which one goes which, I'm going to check, make sure that the springs are either the same or whether they're different. I'm going to make sure to make a note of that. But both the springs look the same. All the diameter, everything looks the same, length same. Got the same tension on them, so the springs are the same, which is good. Well, and the pieces that go with the trigger. And go ahead again, line up the pin on my block. And you try it using a brass punch. Yep. Again, that pin wasn't very hard. Hard to get started at least. Yeah, I'm just going to use light taps on the hammer. Okay. Now the handgun is completely disassembled and is ready to go into the dip tank, then to go be sandblasted and then recoated. Alright, well now we've got his Smith & Wesson all done. We've got it put back together and everything's functioning right. It's looking all really good. He wanted a special stenciling on top. Flip that around. So we're hoping the customer will be pretty happy with it. We've just informed him that his firearm's done. Please subscribe, like us on Facebook. We'll leave a link in the description. I'll put a couple links to a few other websites for helping me out with the video in our description as well. You can check those guys out. Thanks for watching. Hope this is helpful. And hurry up.